Willie Golson was hanged in Birmingham in 1900. 20 years later, his son, Will Jr., was hanged from the same gallows.
Tonight, we meet the keeper of the Museum of Death. Now it seems everyone in Washington once smoked pot. But wait a minute. What about all those boozers on Capitol Hill?
I have to ask you about the supposed affair you had with John F. Kennedy. I got it.
You certainly did, honey.
I don't know. Oh, that's terrible. I really walked into that one.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maury Povich, and welcome to A Current Affair. Death as a pastime. Execution a hobby. 17,000 of them. Men and women shot, hanged, gassed, bludgeoned to death in the name of the law. The keeper of the Museum of Death, the only museum of death, he knows the intimate tales of all his cases. Our Robin Dorian found him surrounded by the macabre in Headland, Alabama.
Well, I've always been kind of an obsessive person. When I start something, I put everything into it. And as I've often told other people, this started purely as a hobby.
A hobby, maybe, but not quite stamp collecting. For the past 17 years, Watt Espy has spent his life documenting death. Executions, to be exact. Chronicling every legal execution that has taken place in the United States since colonial times.
I don't mind telling you, Robin, it's very, very depressing. For 17 years, I've dealt with what is unquestionably the most sordid aspect of human nature. The crimes themselves are sickening, but they're crimes against individuals. The executions are sickening. They're crimes against humanity. That's the difference.
When he began his project, Espy says he was a proponent of the death penalty. But after nearly 2 decades of being obsessed with the subject, he now vehemently opposes it.
I think it's absolutely no deterrent. You have a young man named Gerald A. Gallego, who is on death row in the state of California under sentence to be asphyxiated. He's on death row in the state of Nevada under sentence to die by lethal injection. When he was 10 or 11 years old, his father became the first man in the state of Mississippi to die in the gas chamber. It didn't deter him. I've got a case in Missouri where a man was hanged for killing his wife. 3 years later, his son killed his wife and was hanged. Here in Alabama, Willie Golson was hanged in Birmingham in 1900. 20 years later, his son, Will Jr., was hanged from the same gallows.
As a bachelor, it is easy for Watt to devote his days and nights to his research. His day begins around 1 o'clock in the afternoon and doesn't finish until at least 3 o'clock in the morning, chain smoking through every waking hour. But the hours have paid off. His house is filled with large notebooks and ledgers detailing every little fact, information about the defendant, the victim, the crime, even their background. When he speaks about his subjects, it's as if he's describing a friend of his.
What happened to Dr. Snook?
Well, he was a professor of veterinary medicine at Ohio State University. He was also on the United States Olympics team as a marksman. And middle-aged, married, had grown children, fell in love with one of his students. She was a nymphomaniac. He couldn't keep up, so he shot her and killed her and got electrocuted for it.
Tell him your hometown and he'll tell you about an execution that took place there.
When I first confirm a case, I list them in this ledger. This is my state ledger. For instance, where are you from originally?
Clearwater, Florida.
Clearwater. Well, I think we've had a hanging there, at least one. Let me see real quick. I'll show you. Let's see. Yeah, here we are. Ebenezer Tobit was hanged in Clearwater for the murder of Edward F. Sherman. He was hanged on October the 22nd, 1915, and there are possibly others in there.
What is it that you really hope to accomplish by chronicling all these executions?
Establishing a true historical base on which the national debate on the death penalty can be based. I honestly believe that if the facts, all of the facts, are ever made known to the public at large, they will be as opposed to the death penalty as I am.
It's such a morbid subject. Why do you do it?
Would you enjoy doing it? And yet if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it.
54 years ago, Watt Espy was born here in Headland, Alabama. He's been here ever since, give or take a few years. Describes himself as sort of a regular Southern guy. But those who know prefer the description eccentric.
I don't think I am, no. But I don't think any truly eccentric person thinks they are.
Would you say you've become hardened to death, to murder?
No, I could never become hardened to murder. I'm abhorred by every case of it. The one who probably sends a shudder up and down my spine more than anyone else is a fellow named Gibson from here in Alabama in the early 1940s. He was married, had 4 or 5 children, started running around with a younger woman. He couldn't support his first wife and the children because he was an unemployed carpenter, but he decided he wanted to get rid of his wife and his children, so late one Sunday afternoon he made his children go in and go to bed, knocked his wife out with a kitchen chair, poured gasoline over her and his own 5 children and burned them all alive, ran out the back door, went to church and came back to be shocked at discovering the bodies. You know, you can't have any sympathy for a man like that.
So far, Watt has counted 15,535 legal executions. About 300 are women. He has never actually witnessed an execution, but he has corresponded with prisoners on death row.
I had a particular correspondence with one man who's been executed. I corresponded with him for the last year and a half of his life. I never met him. I became convinced of his innocence. That was very, very upsetting.
Watt is tired of his self-appointed position, and he's ready to move on. He says the stress is overwhelming, and for those interested, his collection is up for sale. Price depends on the best offer.
Life is very uncertain, as you know. I certainly know it because I encounter murders every day in the course of nature with me, and certainly this work has made me realize my own mortality.